Good morning, Chris Lovingood here in the WRAL Live Center. Right now, it seems that our lawmakers at the nation's capital are taking a bit of a break until 9 o'clock this morning in regard to them making cuts and amendments, etc., to the president's so-called One Big Beautiful Bill. A lot of disagreement that's been had on this, including cuts to Medicaid. We're talking about maybe 12-ish million people who won't be without insurance, according to some analysts looking into this bill. But lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have something to say about it this morning, whether defending it or being against it. Take a listen.
This legislation is the most significant attack on the health care needs of the American people in our country's history.
We want them to be safety nets, not hammocks that people stay in, but getting people on their feet.
Now, there are even Republicans who are a bit of holdouts when it comes to this bill, including North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis, saying that Republicans are breaking their promises when it comes to health care in regard to this bill.
Chris, thanks for that. As the Senate tries to advance President Trump's budget plan, we now know Senator Thom Tillis will not be seeking re-election next year. WRAL's Laura Levine is tracking what this means for our state and the U.S. Senate in Washington. And Laura, what can you tell us about the decision from Tillis?
Well, Jeff, good morning. North Carolina Republican Senator Thom Tillis here saying that this decision was not a hard one. He said he wants to spend more time with his family. His announcement comes one day after being only one of two Republicans voting against advancing President Trump's sweeping agenda bill. Over the weekend, he took to social media expressing concern about the impact that cuts to Medicaid would have on North Carolinians. And Trump then threatened to back a primary challenger to his seat in next year's election. Tillis' Senate seat in North Carolina will be crucial for Republicans to keep next year if they want to maintain their narrow majority in the chamber. As senators debated late last night, Tillis once again criticized the bill.
Now, Republicans are about to make a mistake on health care and betraying a promise. It is inescapable that this bill in its current form will betray the very promise that Donald J. Trump made in the Oval Office or in the cabinet room when I was there with finance, where he said we can go after waste, fraud, and abuse on any programs.
For disposition of employment.
So President Trump is now calling for this bill to get to his desk by this Friday, July 4th. Meanwhile, political analysts are now calling this race for the 2026 North Carolina Senate race even more interesting. Laura Levine, WRAL News, live in Raleigh.
A number of possible names in both parties lining up to replace Tillis. They include businessman Andy Nielsen and former congressional candidate Don Brown, both are Republicans. Former U.S. Representative Wiley Nickel is a Democrat, and he announced the launch of his campaign in April. Other potential candidates include former Democratic Governor Roy Cooper, Republican Congressman Pat Harrigan, and Republican National Committee Chairman Michael Whatley.
We're staying on top of two big stories this morning. The Senate will begin working on President Trump's big, beautiful bill later this morning. And Senator Thom Tillis will not seek re-election next year. WRAL's Laura Levine is live with the big shakeup in state and national politics. We're going to, and Chris Lovingood is in the live center, but we'll begin with Laura Levine. Laura.
Good morning. North Carolina Republican Senator Thom Tillis, he says that this decision actually was not a hard one. He says he wants to spend more time with his family. His announcement coming exactly one day after being one of only two Republicans to vote against advancing President Trump's sweeping agenda bill. So we know as he took to social media over the weekend, he shared his concern over the impact that cuts to Medicaid would have on North Carolinians and North Carolinians. And Trump then threatened to back a primary challenger to his seat in next year's election after his vote. Tillis' Senate seat in North Carolina will be crucial for Republicans to keep next year if they want to maintain their narrow majority in the chamber. After his surprise announcement, Tillis said in his statement, quote, "I look forward to having the pure freedom to call the balls and strikes as I see fit and representing the great people of North Carolina." Political analyst David McClennan weighs in on how this will impact decision-making while he is still in office.
He can continue voting against the big, beautiful bill and for or against whatever he thinks serves North Carolina the best. So he's no longer beholden to running for re-election.
And Tillis once again criticized the bill last night as the debate continues. Meanwhile, President Trump is calling for the bill to get to his desk this Friday, July 4th. Laura Levine, WRAL News, live in Raleigh.
And just to kind of jump a little bit on what Laura was saying there in terms of what issues that Senator Thom Tillis had with that bill, the Medicaid, that was one thing that he mentioned, and what it would do to the hundreds of thousands of North Carolinians who would be affected if cuts were made to it. But in addition to that, we also have seen other things in terms of what the bill would be doing. It would be essentially playing into what the president wants to do in terms of boosting deportation as well as cracking down on immigration, border security, things of that nature. And it's also going to be cutting green energy projects. So quite a few different things in here that Republicans are trying to fight for. But again, not all Republicans, as we see Thom Tillis saying that he will not run for re-election after publicly standing against that bill. 9:30 this morning, about 2.5 hours from now, that is when voting is expected to begin on different amendments for the One Big Beautiful Bill.
And all this brings on the next phase. Several candidates are already working on their campaigns to take over Tillis' seat. Businessman Andy Nielsen, who previously ran for lieutenant governor, and former congressional candidate Don Brown are both running to be the Republican candidate for Senate. On the Democratic side, former U.S. Representative Wiley Nickel announced the launch of his campaign in April. WRAL talked to Nickel after the Tillis announcement.
Donald Trump is going to handpick Thom Tillis' successor. That's what we're talking about. Somebody who will be completely loyal to Donald Trump and have his interests in, front and center, not the interests of the folks here in North Carolina. That's a big reason why I'm running for the U.S. Senate.
The open seat could attract more prominent Republicans as well into the 2026 race, including U.S. Representative Pat Harrigan and Republican National Committee Chairman Michael Whatley.
Today, one big debate on President Trump's massive domestic policy package known as the One Big Beautiful Bill. This morning, senators starting a vote-a-rama.
The Senate will resume consideration
when they can offer unlimited amendments to change the bill before a vote on final passage.
What we are doing here is extending tax relief for the American people, keeping their rates low.
This bill, as we have said for months, steals people's health care, jacks up their electricity bill.
The bill includes cuts to programs like Medicaid that the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimates would cost more than 11 million Americans their health care. Republicans argue changes like new work requirements will make the program stronger in the long run.
We want them to be safety nets, not hammocks that people stay in, but getting people on their feet.
Republican Senator Thom Tillis opposes the Medicaid cuts and on Saturday voted against a key procedural vote, though the bill still advanced 51-49.
Republicans are about to make a mistake on health care and betraying a promise.
On Sunday, after scathing criticism from President Trump, Tillis announced he won't seek re-election. Asked if there's room in the GOP to disagree with the president.
If you have the courage to, and if you don't, there isn't.
Democrats also objecting to extended tax cuts, part of why the bill's expected to add more than $3 trillion to the deficit over 10 years.
Using fake math and budgetary hocus pocus to make it seem like a gargantuan tax break for billionaires is going to cost virtually nothing. That's insane.
Republicans largely lockstep.
It's going to make us all more prosperous.
Looking to press ahead with the Trump agenda. There is very little margin for error here, and we're expecting to see amendments from senators in both parties, with Republican Susan Collins saying she's leaning against final passage without substantial revisions, as President Trump urged cost-cutting Republicans not to go too far. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.